Each of them was someone's pride and joy, with hopes and dreams as invincible as steel. But this is the story of a nightmare. Can an accident expert figure out what caused the crash and who was driving? Enter the world of forensic science, the science of crime, where a suspect's guilt or innocence can hang on a single piece of evidence. The young feel that they are invincible. They don't know that the next day, the next hour, the next second, something could happen that could radically change their lives. This is the story of someone who suddenly woke up in a nightmare. They had all graduated from high school the summer before. It was a going-away party for two friends off for a 6-month backpack halfway around the world. But it was really a goodbye party for all of them. Around 11, Sarah LeBeau and her friend arrived in Sarah's new car. The party was already in full swing, 100 strong, including parents and neighbors. But for them, it was just the gang, the high school buds. Even Neil Atchison was there. Neil was a local small-town Ontario boy who amazingly had been drafted to play baseball by the Los Angeles Dodgers. He had come home just for the party. They were going to be friends forever. It would be a night to remember, but not in the way any of them expected. By 5 in the morning, the party had dwindled down to just them. They didn't want the party to end. Who knew when they would be together again? So someone suggested they go to a nearby house for breakfast. Even Sarah, who had to go to work in a few hours, was up for it. It was just a short 5-minute drive away, down a highway they'd driven hundreds of times before. Sarah's friend was in the lead car. Sarah's car followed. But somewhere down the road, she lost sight of Sarah's car. When Sarah's car didn't pull in for breakfast, her friend went back to see if anything had happened. When she saw the shattered cedar guidepost, her heart started to race. What she was about to find was something she will never forget, nor would the small community she lived in.
When our officers arrived, approximately 10 to 15 minutes after the accident took place, the driver of the car wasn't still behind the wheel, sitting in the driver's seat. In this case, it was a single vehicle accident. All 6 occupants of the car were either unconscious or deceased, so we had no one to tell us who was driving.
The living are rushed to the hospital, but the final tally from this accident would be 4 dead.
We have 4 young people from the community, who are all well known, that have died in the accident. 2 are seriously hurt. They were well known as well. Yeah, it has an impact on the surrounding community. So yes, it becomes very high profile almost immediately.
It will fall to Steve Beasley and Rob Kern to begin investigating the question as to what caused the crash and who was driving.
To be able to answer all of the questions that are going to come to us. These are the questions that are going to be asked of us later on. Why did my child die in this accident? How were they killed? What happened to cause this? Was this a problem with the engineering of the road? Was this a problem with the car? Was this a problem with the driver? All of these things need to be addressed.
The first person interviewed is Sarah's friend. She tells the officer that the 2 cars had left one after the other. When Sarah's car didn't show up for breakfast, she went back. That's when she'd come across the horrendous tragedy. When the officer asked if there had been drinking at the party, she says yes, but by the time they left in the morning, pretty much everyone had sobered up. Now comes the key question. Was Sarah driving when they left? Her friend cannot say. She did not see. Everybody was already piled into Sarah's car by the time she tried to get in. But she basically makes one thing clear. Sarah was not the kind of person to drive when she was drunk. So the investigators know the wrecked car belonged to Sarah, but not who was driving. They know there had been drinking at the party, but not whether alcohol was a factor in the crash. They need answers before they know whether criminal charges are warranted and against whom. If investigators hope the 2 survivors can help fill in the details, they will be disappointed. One of them had been so drunk he passed out before he even got into the car. And the other survivor, Sarah LeBeau, is in hospital fighting for her life. In the absence of an eyewitness, it will be up to forensic science to come up with some answers, such as the speed of the car.
The first thing I noticed when I arrived on the scene was a set of marks up on the roadway that were long and shallow, and I realized that these are yaw marks. They're not skid marks. They're not made from a braking tire. What they're made from is a car trying to negotiate a curve. The tires are still rolling during this time frame. The tire is rolling, but it's also side slipping, and the car begins to go into that type of attitude. And what will happen is, if the car is left to go, if nothing happens to the car within that, it may eventually end up into a 4-wheel slide.
Yaw marks suggest the car was speeding. Combined with the booze found in the smashed-up car and the drinking at the party, these might be grounds for criminal charges. More than ever, the key question is, who was driving?
Fortunately, the first 2 officers at the scene noted in their notebooks and actually made drawings in their notebooks of the position of each of the 6 occupants. And in their notes, they showed a female occupant with her feet in the floor pan area and her lower legs in the floor pan area of the car, and she was partially ejected out onto the grass below the car.
That female is Sarah LeBeau, and it is her car. So investigators suspect that Sarah LeBeau had been the driver. Having survived the first of a series of life-threatening operations, Sarah LeBeau awakens to a living nightmare. She's suspected of having killed 4 of her friends, and intensifying the nightmare, she has no memory of any part of the ride. Meanwhile, Accident reconstructionist Rob Kern and investigator Steve Beasley are trying to build a case against Sarah. It is one thing to suspect that Sarah is guilty, but another to build a case beyond a reasonable doubt against her. From the yaw marks at the scene, Rob Kern can tell that Sarah's car had been speeding when it left the road. But exactly how fast was it going? A drag sled is used to establish the road's friction coefficient. When this number is plugged into the mathematical formula for calculating speed, the result is telling.
What we've established using this measurement is at the point where that car begins to side slip, at the beginning of that yaw, that we believe that the car was doing approximately 152 kilometers an hour. And given that the speed limit is 90 kilometers an hour in that zone, we're looking at 62 kilometers an hour over the speed limit.
Having calculated the speed, the scientist can now determine what happened to the car in its last moments.
So we figure the car comes around. It is basically out of control as it's going into yaw, leaves the roadway, travels along the embankment, through the cedar guideposts, traverses the embankment, strikes the perpendicular embankment, vaults, lands, rolls over once.
While Rob Kern uses science to get a picture of what happened, lead investigator Steve Beasley finds a witness who can identify who was driving Sarah's car when it left the party.
I spoke with a young man who had been at the party at the Hill Farm, and he was one of the last to leave. He actually spoke to the occupants in the LeBeau car prior to it leaving. He'd looked in the window and he actually saw Sarah LeBeau behind the wheel of the car, and he saw the car drive away from the farm.
Sarah is slowly recovering physically, but she still has no memory of the crash in which her leg was badly crushed and her foot nearly severed. But her injuries are of interest to investigators.
What interested us the most was the speed and also that impact with the embankment. This is a very, very significant impact because it crushes up the whole left front of the car, the undercarriage, and moves it back in towards the driver footwell area. Well, Sarah LeBeau was the only one with that significant lower extremity injury.
Now the investigators need to factor in the question of alcohol. A blood sample taken from Sarah shortly after the accident had been sent to the Center of Forensic Sciences for testing. It comes back indicating Sarah's blood alcohol content was 0.144, nearly twice the legal limit. So Sarah was legally impaired as well as speeding. As soon as Sarah is out of medical danger, she is charged with the deaths of her friends, 11 counts, including 4 counts of causing death by criminal negligence and of impaired driving causing death.
The facts supported charges being laid against her. I mean, it's a tragedy. She herself suffered tremendous injuries. But, the system of justice that we're in requires where charges be grounded in facts like we had them, charges ought to be laid.
The case against Sarah LeBeau seems conclusive. But the lawyer the LeBeau family hires checks everything. Though accident reconstruction is based on reams of data, it is not an exact science. Could investigators have misinterpreted or overlooked a key clue? That's when Sarah's defense seizes on the driver's airbag. This is 1995, and airbags are still relatively new. None of the investigators had thought to check them out. Exhibit A, bloodstains on a driver's airbag. Could they determine who had been driving Sarah's car when it crashed? Defense sends the driver's airbag to an independent lab. The lab confirms that there are bloodstains on the airbag, none of which are Sarah's.
The defense was hoping to establish that she wasn't the driver by using the airbag. And the defense wanted to establish that someone else's blood was on the airbag because the analysis of the blood on the airbag did not reveal Sarah LeBeau's blood. So I think the defense position was, well, if it wasn't her blood, then she's not the driver.
Defense also points out that a boot belonging to Neil Acheson was found near the crushed driver's footwell. Neil's body had been found close to Sarah's. Sarah had been seen at the wheel leaving the party. But Sarah claims that on more than one occasion, Neil had asked if he could drive Sarah's car. Was it possible that there had been a switch and that Neil was driving when the car crashed? Sarah has been identified as the driver of the fatal car. But why aren't any of the blood spatters on the driver's side airbag hers? And why was a boot belonging to Neil Acheson found near the driver's footwell? Is it possible that someone else was driving Sarah's car when it went off the road? Shortly before the case comes to trial, and almost 3 years after the crash, Sarah's lawyer gets her to take part in a staged reenactment of the fatal drive in an effort to recover her memory. She later testifies that a few images came flooding back to her. She sort of remembered being in the driver's seat. And she sort of remembered the car stopping. And she remembered Neil Acheson getting in behind the wheel. Is Sarah's recovered memory a desperate attempt to avoid a jail sentence? Is her mind playing tricks to avoid facing the truth that she is responsible for killing 4 of her friends?
Well, originally her position was that she just couldn't remember what happened. And that memory or that position was maintained for a long time. After that reenactment, apparently this memory emerged where she recalled switching seats with Neil Acheson, who our belief was the center front passenger. What weight can you give that kind of evidence where you have a memory emerge after a reenactment?
But Sarah's lawyer doesn't have to prove who was driving the car. All he has to do is raise a reasonable doubt that Sarah was not behind the wheel when the car crashed.
The center question to be answered was Ms. LeBeau seated in the driver's seat time of the crash. That had to be answered. And it was basically left to us to ascertain what was on this bag that might assist the police, the investigators, the court. Ultimately, what's the truth in this matter? Was she seated there or not?
Keith Kelder tests the bloodstains. They haven't come from Sarah, but they also haven't come from Neil, and no one else has ever been suggested as the driver.
Then I decided, as I decided on very early in this investigation, to test for saliva. I reasoned that there may be a very good possibility that whoever was driving during that horrific crash and that solid impact with the bag, that saliva would be deposited on this bag.
Within 20 minutes, the test paper turns blue, confirming the presence of amylase, a key ingredient in saliva. The DNA is consistent with that of Sarah LeBeau. But Sarah's lawyer argues that the saliva test doesn't prove anything. He suggests that the saliva was simply projected onto the airbag during the accident. But the airbag has not yet revealed all its secrets. It is passed on to forensic chemist Brenda Burton.
There were 3 basic areas that I looked at and analyzed, there was the black deposits or smears. There were some pinkish colored smears around one of the black areas that I analyzed, as well as some of the other, there was a larger pinkish colored smear down below those deposits that were analyzed as well.
She suspects that the black material is mascara and possibly eyeliner. So she compares the smears to her cosmetic samples.
What emerged from that analysis was not only, the presence of saliva and blood, but these cosmetic marks, almost in the fashion of two eyebrows that were seen on the airbag. And at the bottom of the triangle was some saliva where the DNA matched Sarah. So it was almost as if her face was imprinted in the airbag.
Tests show Sarah LeBeau was legally impaired, having a blood alcohol content twice the legal limit. Sarah LeBeau was behind the wheel when her car left the party, and she did not switch places with Neil Atchison or anyone else. In a 90-kilometer zone, Sarah LeBeau's car was speeding at approximately 150 kilometers an hour when it missed the curve and crashed. In the end, the airbag that saved Sarah's life also led to her conviction. Sarah LeBeau was found guilty on all counts of causing death by criminal negligence and of impaired driving causing death. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Though the imprint of her face was found on the airbag, Sarah could not accept the verdict. She is currently appealing her conviction. Sarah's conviction divided the community. Some felt she had suffered enough, but others couldn't forgive her for trying to blame a dead friend and not accepting full responsibility for getting behind the wheel. The stories on Exhibit A are based on true cases. The forensic scientists and investigators are the actual individuals who worked on the cases. The names of the guilty are real.